Yeah, shout out to Hal's Moving Snack for the most effective character intro. He looks so wounded when Mel spills wine.
Yeah, he looks so sad.
I love Ambessa and whoever this motherfucker is.
I want more of him.
He doesn't get a name, and I don't want a name. I'm just gonna call him Hal's Moving Snack for the rest of time.
Welcome to Mortified, the Friendship Quest, a podcast where two long-distance friends bounce media recommendations, all in hopes the other will like it. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Lost Nuts.
And this week, we get deep into League of Legends lore with Netflix's Arcane. Before we build a shark nuke, remember you can help us on Mortified the Legitimacy Quest by subscribing to us on YouTube, iTunes, or Spotify, signing up for our monthly newsletter through the link in our show notes, or following us on Twitter and Tumblr at MortifiedPod. Leyla.
Aaron.
Firstly, Happy New Year. Happy Season 3.
Happy New Year to you, too. We spent it together playing Catan.
Yes, it was fun. We got weirdly aggro. It's a competitive game.
Not as aggro as my friend and also your wife.
Yeah, that's true.
The people we brought to the table
yes.
were the most aggro of all.
Extremely funny. But more importantly, how do you feel about MOBAs?
So I have an anecdote, which is to say I was telling Marty about this show, Arcane, that we are watched. There's a character in Arcane that looks like Junkrat, the character from Overwatch. And the reason I remembered that in conversation with Marty was because they said, whenever I looked at previews for Arcane, I thought it was a Borderlands thing, just because of the style. And I said, oh yeah, there's a guy in there that looks like Junkrat, from Borderlands. He's not from Borderlands.
Not really.
And Marty says, Junkrat's from Overwatch. And then I got myself even more confused, because I couldn't remember if my college roommate was obsessed with Borderlands, Overwatch, or both. And as I was sitting here trying to say the names of these franchises back to back, my mouth wants to jumble them into like Border Watch. I know
Border Watch,
nothing.
the right-wing MOBA we've all been waiting for.
I know nothing about MOBAs. I play single-player fantasy games. So, yeah, what's your relationship to them?
I spent about 40 minutes trying to get into Defense of the Ancients too, and I was like, well, this seems stupid. And then I also played a little bit of that new one, the Pokemon, is it Pokemon Unite? I don't know. It came out like in July of last year, and I don't know. I just can't get into those, but like League of Legends was absolutely the first like a MOBA I ever heard of. Like people were playing this like when I was in high school. And
yeah,
like
that sounds right.
Which was like 10 years ago, which is it's very strange to me to see like this. I mean, I'm sure League of Legends is still huge. It's clearly, big enough that they can get a whole Netflix special.
It made $2 billion I don't know if it made $2 billion, but people spent $2 billion on it last year. I think I saw somewhere.
Yeah. So like, clearly League of Legends is still alive and kicking, but it was just so weird to be like, they're making a what out of what? But like, as it turns out, you can take fucking lane defending video game with very, very little lore and turn it into a pretty darn good animated show.
Yeah. We got a lot to talk about. Do we want to just like get into it?
So we are set in the steampunk city of Piltover, which is split into two realms, which is the wealthy topside realm and the poor undercity. And basically, Arcane follows political and social tensions like through the lens of characters who live in one half of these realms. The most important are these two sisters, Violet or Vi and Powder. And they try to, are making ends meet by basically like doing odd jobs and robbing people. But the first episode opens with them like robbing this magical workshop from the top side, and that causes a lot of trouble. and there's a big explosion, and then all the rich people are like, all those pores are really causing us a lot of trouble. What if we just sent in all our cops and murdered them? And then a lot of that centers around the central threat of being destroyed by your militarized state, which American viewers will definitely sympathize with. But like, yeah, they're basically, they have this adopted dad who's like just this big chunky guy who runs this bar. His name is Vander. He's great. He's been holding the Undercity together for a while, and he's like, hey, you guys can't piss off the topsiders. But he also has this former friend, Silco, who apparently wants the Undercity to be like a separate nation entirely, the nation of Zaun. He instigates this crisis and unfortunately ends up with their adoptive dad dead. Vander dies in this conflict. Violet ends up in prison, and Powder actually ends up, accidentally. Okay, yeah. Spoilers for Arcane throughout. Ends up killing Vander and a bunch of their friends, like their little thief gang, in an accident, and for whatever reason, becomes Silco's apprentice after this, like his adoptive daughter. There's like about a 5 or 10 year time skip, I would say. Powder now is going by Jinx, and she is helping Silco instigate this war with Topside. She draws the attention of a counselor by the name of Jace, who is this hex tech, which is just magic technology. He is trying to stop this. He and his adoptive sister Caitlin are working together. She's a cop, and they're trying to investigate what's going on with these attacks. Caitlin goes and finds Vi, who is in prison, and not breaks her out. She uses her cop powers to get her released, and then they have gay adventures together to try to stop Silco from instigating this war. Basically, Jace has this friend whose name is Victor. They are just making these advancements in this magical technology, hex tech. Jace does a lot of politics, but eventually Victor's like research into this hex tech technology makes him very sick, and that becomes a problem. And then basically at the end, Violet and Caitlin track down Silco. Jace is trying to broker this peace, trying to be like, hey, we don't need to invade. Maybe they should just have their own country. And then in the end, Jinx kills Silco, but also uses Jace's hex tech to shoot a mini nuke shaped like a shark at the political center of Topside, which we don't really see. It cuts to black before the actual nuke hits, but we assume that's going to be bad for everyone in season 2. But this is a very, very plot heavy, character heavy show, and I'm surprised with the amount of like weird world building and characters and moving elements that they pull it off as well as they did. But honestly, it's pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. The one tiny addendum is that Victor got sick off of the fumes in the underside.
Okay.
So he was previously ill.
Thank you.
Hex tech was not making him sick. So let's talk about our characters. There's a lot of them, and most of them are good, I think.
Yes. Despite this big ensemble, all these characters are distinct and have like pretty interesting personalities. So we start with Vi. If you know anything about Arcane, you've seen this redhead / pink-haired lady with big fists. Her thing is punching, and I think she's perfectly fine at what she does.
It's so satisfying when she punch real good.
Her fight scenes are my favorite in this show.
Absolutely, 100,000%. I shout out to whoever tweeted this forever ago. But someone put up the concept art for Vi as she is in League of Legends, and then what she looks like in Arcane, and they said something along the lines of like what women look like when a man designs them and what women look like when a lesbian designs them, and fucking correct. There were a couple of moments when Vi would do something gay or punchy, and my brain executed gay.exe, and I would just sit at my computer and go giggle. She's great. I love her very much. No notes. Now, Powder / Jinx.
However, there is one small problem with this franchise, and I do believe it is with this character. So Powder, before the time skip, I think Powder's a very good character. She is inexperienced, but like we can see she's very smart. She's making all these little bombs, but all she's like very clearly traumatized by the violence she and her sister have lived through. Like they watch their parents die. They live in this like rough and tumble undercity where people are always like stealing and fighting. And she has a lot of trauma. And she's always like her friends, Milo and Clagger, are always just like, Powder, you're really letting us down in all these cool jobs. And at the very end, when her Powder makes this big explosion with this hex tech technology, and it kills Milo, Clagger, and Vander, their father, Vi and her get into a big fight, and she's like, "You're a Jinx," and that's where she gets her name. And because of all this trauma, Jinx, she's straight up mentally ill, right? Like, I think she just like has psychosis and post-traumatic stress disorder. Like, I don't think that's, pathologizing the character. I think it's just patently true. But because she gets adopted by the bad guy, she turns into a fucking Harley Quinn, and not in the recent Suicide Squad, but the bad Suicide Squad one, where she's Daddy's little monster, and it's really, really frustrating because I really like this character, but we have to stop being like, oh, if someone has psychosis, they're sweet but a psycho. We love that for them, and it's just like, Leyla, what do you think?
Yeah, Arcane has limitations in the sense that it has to get these characters to the point in which like League players know them, and Jinx was not really designed with a meaningful backstory in mind, I don't think. Because when you look at her art, she just looks like, like an unhinged, like, area of effect damage, like, bomber character. Like, that's the point they had to get her to. And, yeah, it's uncomfortable to watch because it's, at first it's like, okay, yeah, maybe when she hits rock bottom, like this portrayal, they're trying to do something inventive with it, with her always like getting flashbacks of Milo and Clagger and like hearing them. And like occasionally she's like sees the, it's just, I don't think there's anything else they could have done is the problem.
Yeah.
Because they had to get Jinx to the point of who she is in League.
I think that's a very good point, and thank you for bringing that up, because like that is the limitation of building a property off of something that's already 10 years old, is like whatever scrap of lore you have, it's like, oh, I don't know that this lore is great, but if you're going to stick with the IP, you have to unfortunately bring out those portrayals. I wish they maybe did something that didn't involve psychosis. Like I think it's a very difficult line to walk, because like I think that people with psychosis do deserve to be portrayed in media, but like it is invariably always this, and I unfortunately am not, don't have any really deep knowledge of what it's like to live with psychosis, or I can't speak on that especially well, but I do think that I would suspect that other people with that disability are not thrilled about this portrayal.
Yeah, we don't even have to get that deep into it. I think it could be as simple as people with psychosis deserve to be portrayed without their psychosis being a plot device.
Yes, thank you. That's perfect. But either way, though, I think her storyline and motivations are the best in this. I really like her character quite a lot, even in spite of all that. So, it's a frustrating thing, but we'll talk about Jinx more, I think. How do you feel about Jace?
Bisexual disaster. Absolute lunatic. He is codependent and impatient, which is bad.
Yeah, let's talk about him with Victor, because what you surprised me, because you're like, oh, there's queerbaiting in Arcane, and what I was thinking about was you talking about Vi and Caitlyn, and I was like, everything I've seen on Twitter has been really pro Vi and Caitlyn. I don't know what you're talking about. And then I was reading your notes and I was like, oh, you're talking about the other people who are definitely a little like, I don't know how this is not queer coding. You wrote some lines down. It was like, okay, these two men are in love.
Yeah, okay, so here's my problem with Jason Victor. Listen, y'all, I'm too old for fandom. Like, I'm not too old for fandom. I rescind that. I am too old to get personally invested in getting queer baited. Like, it no longer makes me angry. Like, I just don't have the capacity for it anymore. But I was watching this knowing, like, friends of mine are very, like, deeply into this pairing, and, like, I knew there was a fandom built around it, but just like with Promare a couple years ago, I don't believe it till I see it. And so I was watching this, and I was like, maybe people are reading too far into it, you know, like, maybe there's, like, moments being taken out of context. I want to see for myself. No, yeah, they just met, and Jace puts his hand on Victor's shoulder, and he's like, because Victor's like, this is your Hextech dream, and Jace is like, no, this is our Hextech dream. And then he goes to, like, has to make a speech at some point when Mel is, like, getting him to be a politician, and he met, like, in the scene before, Mel puts her hand on his chest to, like, come on to him, and he looks so stiff and awkward, and he's just standing there. He has no idea what to do with this very hot lady coming on to him, and then literally it cuts to the next scene, and he puts his arm around Victor, and he's like, you should come up there with me, because we're partners. And Victor gets really flustered and starts stammering. He goes, oh my god, not in front of all those people. I'm like, you gay disaster, what is happening? I think the worst one, for me, the funniest one, was, and I'm not even mentioning them floating together and refusing to come down. The funniest one is where Victor goes to this, like, sketchy old man in a cave he used to study with. And he's like, he offers him, like, modified drugs to do his, like, weird science experiment shit so he's not dying. And he goes, the scientist goes, that's the cost of progress, is love and legacy, which is a pretty metal line. And Victor goes, Jace will understand. Cut to Jace shirtless in a forge. I'm like, what? What is happening? Because Jace is fucking Mel on screen. We'll talk about it. It's like, it is unhinged. And, like, Jace is a fine character. I don't love him. I don't hate him. You wrote down steampunk Elon Musk, which I think is correct. With maybe, like, I don't know, maybe he's, like, the good version of that, because he's really does try to help people. But, everyone projects something they want out of him onto him, and he just becomes that thing for them, and he's too impatient to, like, really think or assess. Like, even Mel's mom comes in literally the last 2 episodes, and in a second he's molded to, like, what she wants him to be. So it's really interesting to watch. I'm excited to see the consequences of his actions in season 2.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think alone he's, like, a pretty, you know, boilerplate character, but his interactions with other characters make him very interesting. Which,
speaking of, like, league designs, y'all Google what this man looks like in that game, please.
Yeah, it is night and day between, like, him in Arcane looks like, you know, like a, you know, steampunk businessman, but, like, you know, with a white blazer. In League of Legends, he looks like a Warhammer soldier. It's ridiculous.
He's just a weird Dorito with a hammer. It's so much.
It's a lot. It's very funny. Anyway, his adopted sister, Caitlyn, you also have...
Is she his adopted sister?
Yes, her family is his patrons, basically.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Got it.
I like Caitlyn a lot, you know, despite the fact that she's a cop. I think she's a very interesting and, like, cool character, because we get to see, like, oh, she's, you know, like, a privileged person, but also trying to get away, you know, trying to, you know, distance herself from her rich family and become, you know, somebody who actually gets to help people. And, like, she's also, like, canonically, we see her parents, so we know she's biracial. She's a biracial East Asian person, which I think is great. We love biracial characters. You know, she there's a very good scene where like they have to infiltrate a brothel, like Violet and Caitlyn do, and like Violet's just like, yeah, you just got to be hot, Cupcake, give them what they want, and then like she like throws him, to talk with like this guy, and she's like, oh, I love to talk about things with men, this is great, and then like Violet goes to go interrogate someone, and when she comes back, she like sees Caitlyn completely relaxed, like totally charming this woman who is at the brothel, and we're like, oh, that's why she couldn't talk to the man. I see, which is great, and like I think maybe that there is some valid criticism that the Victor Jace stuff is queer baiting. I don't think you can apply that criticism to Caitlyn and Violet.
No, there are too many like longing chin touches and not denying Jinx when she calls Caitlyn Vi's girlfriend. They're gay. It's fine. I love it for them. Honestly, I was so excited. Justice for Caitlyn, though, give her pants.
Yeah, I mean, she does have a skirt, which is weird.
A ruffly skirt that is shorter in the front than it is in the back, and she's a cop.
She's a sniper cop. Like, she doesn't need that.
She absolutely does. Also, she's doing like parkour with Vi. It just, it really, every time I saw the skirt, it sent me to hell. Every single time I saw the skirt, it sent me to hell, and it made me think of an evil inverse version of Yuna's outfit from Final Fantasy X2.
Yes, instead of being cool and like anti-pope, like it's
pro-pope skirt. It's a clergy skirt. I hate it. It's so bad.
I mean, I like you said, this is just her character in League of Legends had a skirt, so I guess they had to do this too, which is just the limitation of, like we were saying, having original existing IP. You can't win them all. Do you want to talk any more about Victor?
Gay.
Yeah, he's pretty gay.
Gay, sad.
They try to do a thing with his assistant where they like, they like have her die when he activates the Hextech core. And like he tries to, like, they try to make it seem like he was very sad, but like in the past like 4 scenes with her, he was always ignoring her and like looking longingly at Jace. So like I don't love that particular beat, but
if you want your scientists to appear less gay, have them do a little bit less longing staring at each other's chiseled jaws or whatever, and a little more longing staring at their science projects. I'm just saying. Yeah, I didn't like the Sky beat either. Sky deserved better. Justice for Sky. Whatchamacallit. I do... you and I both made a note of it, but there's a scene that I thought was really well done in episode 5, I think, where it opens with Victor's sad orphan backstory, because everyone has one. And he had built this little boat, and he sends it down a river, and then has to chase after it, and like he can't, because his leg is he's disabled, he has a cane. And it was just such a neat, sad metaphor to both expose a little bit of his backstory, to like give the sense that he's always been like this. And also just be a really, like, beautiful lead-in to the fact that his inventions lead him to dangerous places and go past his control, and he'll follow them anywhere, including to go study with a man in a cave, which when that happened, all I could think of, like, him handing his resume into the academy to apply. It's like, oh, Victor, you've achieved so much. It does say here you studied with man in cave. Would you care to elaborate?
Yes, he has a big salamander. I'm sure you've heard of him.
Oh, I love the salamander. Justice for the salamander.
Also
a lot of animals. Justice for the salamander, for the crow that Jinx shoots, and also for the Sphinx cat in the beginning.
Yeah, a lot of poor animals that don't deserve to be in this gritty world.
For real. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Victor. I think he's well done. I wish we saw a little bit more of him, just like as an independent actor, or maybe his relationship to anyone but Jace. But yeah, I think it's pretty good.
So let's talk about the biggest antagonist, Silco. I feel like Silco is a complicated one because, like, we do, especially in the first 3 episodes, we get these hints at his backstory with Vander and how, like, they used to be like brothers and they used to have this united dream of making the Undercity strong against Piltover. But like they never say that explicitly, so I was a little bit shocked when at like later on in the series they were like, oh yeah, I want independence for the Undercity. I was like, that was never, it was hinted at certainly, but it was never explicitly articulated, which maybe that's on me as being an inattentive viewer, but his motivations did confuse me the whole time. But also I think that his relationship with Jinx was very believable, and I thought it made his character pretty strong.
Yeah, I really like Silco because, first of all, he's a stunt queen. We all know I love a stunt queen. He walks into a meeting just to gas people to make a point.
Yeah,
he wasn't even trying to, like, actually hurt them.
He was just like, don't fucking come for me.
He just wanted to make a point. He gassed them for emphasis. It was a lot. But yeah, I agree with you. I think his relationship to Jinx is really believable because he acts out of love for her without her there. So he like actively goes against the interests of all the other people around him and calls her his daughter. So it is like genuinely believable, and I really liked it. I think that the thing you spoke to in terms of like not knowing that Zaun was going to separate was something I noticed when I was like going over both of our notes, which is like you and I both caught like different nuances in the scripts. Like you and I both missed plot points. Like I missed Sky's name. You missed the Zaun thing. And I think in trying to be so layered and so complicated, like this show does forget to explicitly state some things for the audience, which you just kind of need to do, especially in a franchise that's so busy. Like the biggest thing you and I came away with, we don't know what magic in this world does. Like at all.
We've seen it can teleport stuff, and we've seen it can turn into weapons, and like maybe that's all you need, but it was definitely something. We'll talk about it later on in the show, but yeah, it was definitely a strange thing.
Yeah, so it's like just part of a larger pattern in terms of that. So a subnote under Silco is Savika. Justice for Savika.
Yeah, Savika is Silco's like right-hand woman who he basically just makes do all his shitty chores. She's really cool and has a kukri knife and basically gets the shit beaten out of her twice by Violet. And there's a part where like a bunch of people are like, hey, Savika, you should take over Silco's drug empire because he's failing and being bad at it. And she sticks with him. And I was just like, girl, you deserved better. You needed a promotion. Sorry, Savika. R.I.P.
R.I.P. She jumped in front of a bomb for him, and he was still rude to her. I think she should have betrayed him. But you know
100%.
That's what loyalty gets you. Girl boss time. This is the girl boss section.
Hell yeah, here we go.
Mel Medarda, how do you feel about her?
I think so. In your notes, you criticized her for being like kind of passive and not really having explicit motivations, which later on get more well articulated as the show develops. But I really liked her. I thought it was very interesting that like her whole thing was like, I see Jace, I'm going to elevate him, make him my protege, and invest in his hex tech, and that's going to make me rich. I liked I think the relationship between them is fine. But yeah, like seeing her as somebody, especially those last two episodes when we meet her mom and we realize like what her whole thing is, which is like always trying to find a diplomatic solution and like understanding the reality of like violent conflict. I thought she was really cool. Yeah, like you said, girl boss supreme.
Yeah, girl boss for sure. Yeah, I think I had like a couple hours to think on it after the last couple of episodes, and I don't think it's that necessarily she's passive. I think that the story doesn't challenge her directly until the last two episodes. She is an element in everyone else's challenges, but she does not get her own challenge. So it's hard to piece together what she wants other than approval from her family. And it's also hard to piece together her like genuine motivations towards Jace or the way she feels about literally anybody else, including Heimerdinger, who she has some relationship with. And like even in a scene when they were deciding whether or not to weaponize hex tech, she was literally standing in a room with Victor and never addressed him directly. There is no way that they don't have some sort of speaking relationship. So it was just odd. It's again speaks to a larger pattern in this series with like I think it needed one more episode. I really do. and it just needed to let some things breathe, and I think Mel was maybe the one in most desperate need of that.
Yes, but if I really, really sincerely hope she survives the attack at the end of this series. I'm gonna be pissed if she's dead.
Oh, I'm gonna be furious if she's dead. She rules.
But one character I know is gonna be around is her mom, Ambessa Medarda, who fucking rules.
No, go ahead and read what your note is in our outline. Go ahead.
Biggest pussy energy in this show. I love her. Basically, she comes in at episode 8 of 9, which is a wild thing to do, narratively speaking. But they're like, hey, you know this important character? Here's her hot mom, who's old and, like, got scars everywhere, and also is, like, here to fuck and cause diplomatic problems, and she's all out of diplomatic problems. And, like... The best way they introduce her is they first have this like flashback where they show her like, you know, telling, you know, Mel like, hey, we're not supposed to have mercy, you know, and she executes a prisoner right in front of Mel to show like, hey, this is how I go, I rule, I don't have any mercy, and then we cut to this like, you know, 20 years later where she's like visiting Mel in this big city, you know, because she's from a different country, and she comes in and she's just like, okay, yeah, I'm here to visit and, you know, talk diplomacy with you, Mel. But in the the line that Mel says is she's like, well, Mom, I'm sure you didn't come halfway across the world to just sample the local cuisine. You know, and they go back and forth and then they separate and, you know, she's like, I'll see you later. And then this fucking blimp rolls up and this like little, what Leyla described as Howl's movable snack, this very skinny, attractive young white man, says, Miss Medarda, and both of them go, yes. And then her mom goes, he's for me. And then she's like, you know, I'll see you later, Mel. I'm about to sample the local cuisine, and runs her hand across his face. And then like later we see like he's giving her massages and she's like fully nude. She meets Jace fully nude in a bathtub while this guy is like giving her a massage. And like, she just like does not give a fuck. She is so cool. I love Ambessa Medarda.
She rules so fucking much. Yeah, shout out to Hal's Moving Snack for the most effective character intro. He looks so wounded when Mel spills wine.
Yeah, he looks so sad.
I love Ambessa and whoever this motherfucker is.
I want more of him.
Get a name. And I don't want a name. I'm just gonna call him Hal's Moving Snack for the rest of time. Heimerdinger is too cute to be running anything.
Yeah, he is one of the very few like non-human species in this world, and it's very strange. But like basically, his backstory is that like he lives like hundreds and hundreds of years, so like he saw what happened to the world the last time like this hex tech technology was harnessed and used, and he's just like a little guy. Like he has a big mustache, and we'll talk about his face in the second half of the show. But like, yeah, his whole thing is just being like, you got to be really careful. How about you know, give it another 10 years. Things take time. You got to always be patient. And while everyone else is like, bro, people are dying. You have to do something. But yeah, I liked him. He's cute. He has a little cute, weird dog.
I like his weird dog a lot. I like Heimerdinger. He's good. I couldn't take him seriously because his character intro is him going to see Jason Victor and he's scurrying so fast that his own head almost tips him over. So yeah, it's wild. Vander would not die.
Yeah, I think he does a fine job of being like the protective dad who, you know, runs a bar and holds the Undercity together. But at the very end where like, you know, they're trying to track down Violet and Powder, the bad guys are, he gets captured by Silco. There's like this big fight between, you know, them and Silco, and Vander gets like stabbed and has like a building dropped on him and gets injected with evil drugs. And like, he still does not die until like the very end of that. And it's like, this dude is, just holding on by the power of pure fatherhood, and I have to respect that.
I also respect it. Yeah, I knew he was gonna die. Because like, how else is Silco gonna get his hands on Jinx? You know.
Yeah.
And I just kept waiting for it, and it was when the rat boy attacked him. I was like, oh, he's dead. Then he wasn't dead, and then all the other shit happens, and then every single time I was like, he's dead, and then he wasn't dead. Truly built different. Built different, man.
Yep.
I love him though. He's great. He's also hot. I feel like I should mention that. He's very hot.
He's a sad dad. The listeners know what your style is.
It's he's protective. It's fine. Milo and Clagor ripped to 2 legends.
Yeah, I think like they're only in 3 episodes, but I think they do a very effective job of characterizing the other characters. They're red shirts. Their purpose is to be killed. But like, I think, like, I don't think they're fridged. Like, I think they got to be like pretty relatively complete characters that helped the audience understand the circumstances of, not only just the Undercity, but Violet and Powder's relationship. And then like when they both are killed by Powder, like you feel it. And like their presence as, psychotic, manifestations, is impactful to the audience. So like, pretty good job.
Next up was Echo.
Yeah, I liked Echo a lot. Again, I feel like I hope we get more of him in season 2. There's a really, really cool fight sequence between him and Jinx at the end of one episode. Like the style gets all different for no reason, and I love it. It fucks. But yeah, he's like a cool skateboarder dude. He's a really cute little kid in the first 3 episodes, so I think it's great.
Now, you want to introduce your favorite character?
Now, there is people who've been listening to Mortified for a long time will know that actually this is all related to the Mortiverse. Because the subjects of, I want to say, our 2nd or 3rd episode do appear as themselves in Arcane. It's Imagine Dragons, everybody!
Listen, the intro is enemy, right? The intro is Imagine Dragons. I was like, oh, LOL, I'm imagining dragons. And then we go through a couple episodes, and then I hear enemy again. I go, oh, I'm imagining dragons again. And then they cut to them playing it in the show, and I was like, the dragons are diagetic!
They have, like, League of Legends Arcane stylized Imagine Dragons playing a set at the bar. And it's just like, okay, sure, we're here.
Oh my god, it was so much. What a beautiful choice. Imagine Dragons as themselves. If House Moving Snack isn't the episode title, that might be.
Oh my Christ. That is a pretty good segue into the second half of our show where we talk about world building, because that you are making a world building choice by putting Imagine Dragons in canon in your universe.
Please keep making it. I do wish they had a different song.
You don't like Enemy?
I think it's fine. They have better ones.
It is fine, but like, I mean, that's the thing. Imagine Dragons has been working for League of Legends for a long time, so like, you know what? Good for them. I'm glad they were able to keep the brand intact.
Yeah, Riot really called up all their old friends, because Fortiche, the studio behind this, also has done a ton of work for them. So they were like, hey, Dragons, Fortiche, we're doing it. Get ready. All that money people are spending on skins, guess what? Write me a show about lesbians, which is great.
Yeah.
Power to Fortiche.
But yeah, like, so we both, pointed out some interesting details about the world building of this. Specifically, I think, a lot of the positive reviews talked about how they were able to take the steampunk genre and add this like sci-fi magic twist on it and make it like interesting and new. And I think that like, well, I don't think it's that new from steampunk. I think it's new enough that it gives it like a different coat of paint, and I like it well enough. But like, there are some really, really fun bits of world building. Like, when everybody votes in the council, they have this big stupid like who wants to be a millionaire ass spotlight that comes on whenever a counselor raises their hand, it like shines down on them to show that they're like making a vote. I think that's really fun. When Vi and Caitlin go to the Undercity, like the first thing Vi does after she gets out of prison is go to like this food stand, and she just eats this big bowl of slimy worms, and she's like, "Mwah, this is just as good as I remember." And I just love that trope where somebody's eating something that looks gross and loves it. And then probably my favorite bit of world building is, of course, in the concert hall, if you want to explain that, Leyla.
So, listen, I get what they were going for. It was this, they were playing a concerto in the concert hall, and it was, like, clearly some sort of stringed instrument that was supposed to have its own amplifier attached to it, but it did just look like a violin and a tuba mashed together, so we are calling it the viluba.
I love the viluba. I think it's great.
Viluba supremacy! Also, they clearly got like a ton of reference footage of somebody actually playing a violin because it was very, very believable.
Yeah, no, I mean, this show looks great. I don't think that's going to be a surprise to anyone. But you made a note about like how to make fantasy worlds feel familiar, specifically with their holidays, technology, and traditions. And like I pointed out, so there's like a point where a character dies, and they do a 21 gun salute, which is like not a thing outside of I mean, I don't know, maybe aliens have a 21 gun salute, but like it doesn't make sense for it to be in a world that's not our world, but they include it anyway. Another thing they do is they have their holiday on Progress Day, which is the birthday of Piltover, which I think happens a lot. There's like, I need a holiday, let's just make it the city's founding day, which I feel they probably could have done something more interesting with. But like, I think you're not wrong in making the note that like sometimes you have to make these world building touchstones feel familiar to the reader, even if they don't necessarily make sense in universe. Yeah,
I mean, like we can even draw from the Adventure Zone, right? We can draw from that. Like Candle Nights, right? Every single property, I mean, not everyone, but most properties have some sort of winter holiday, and it usually involves some sort of gift giving. There's also a lot of holidays centered around the harvest. That's like Thanksgiving-esque. But it really, you want to celebrate things like New Year's. I actually don't even mind the Progress Day thing because I think it's in character for a city whose main institution is an academy, to kind of have a science fair birthday party, But yeah, I think that when you're making a fictional world, you kind of want something that you don't have to explain to the audience sometimes. So I agree with you, like on the 21 gun salute made really no sense for it to be in there. You could have had any other tradition. I also noticed that they threw the first handful of dirt into the grave,
yes,
which is also a tradition from like our world. I think maybe Grayson's funeral, which again, rip to a legend. We didn't even talk about Grayson. She was cool.
Yeah.
Grayson or Marcus, they were cops. One is a good cop, one's a bad cop. But, I think maybe the funeral would have been a good place to, like, experiment a little bit with those traditions. But, yeah, it's just one of those things, like, you and I both write fantasy. There's a ton of places to introduce new stuff. Like, I think they could have spent a little bit more time, again, explaining magic to us a little bit. Just, like, its capability, its capacity. Is it just, like... Because they treat Hextech like a battery, so is it just that? Is it just power, that could do different things with different It was very, like, vague, which is odd when you have two scientist characters who you would, like, hope would explain it to you a little bit. Mm-hmm. Just, like... It's important for characters to be relatable. It's also important for worlds to be relatable, especially science... or any sort of like science fiction fantasy world, because that's where a lot of people feel lost, especially if their first introduction to a science fiction or fantasy setting is something like Dune, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, any of those like big titles where you like have no point of reference, and all anybody ever talks about is these like hyper detailed minutia of the lore. I think that's part of the reason a lot of these like actual play D&D podcasts are so big now, because the DM controls the flow of information and also the characters talk in a way that's relatable. So yeah, I think all of that just goes back into like, I think that it's important to have those touchstones that tie your world to our world, but I'm not sure if Arcane necessarily picked the right ones.
Yeah. I mean, like you're saying, I think it's probably fine that they kept like the 21 gun salute. Like, I think it's weird, but like you said, like they're trying to do a lot of world building and juggling characters, and sometimes it's just easier to use those visual and narrative shorthands to get across the significance of a moment. But yeah, I do hope that in season 2 they'll experiment a little more and do some more weird shit, because clearly it's a weird fantastical world, and I want to see more inventive ideas coming out of that. But I mean, that comes into our next point, which is like, there's so many moving parts in this, like, and sometimes that gets caught, like they get caught on each other or they get left out. Like we talked about earlier, like how we didn't understand the Nation of Zon bit, or like the hex tech weaponry, for instance. Like I didn't think that they had the, like, everybody was like, oh, we got to get the crystal. The crystal's been stolen. We got to get it back. It's really important. And like, I didn't really understand the significance of the crystal. I know they were like basically referencing how they could be dangerous. I mean, they fucking blow up a building in the first episode, so like we know they're dangerous, but like between the hex core and Jace's experimentation with the stuff, like it didn't seem like they had weaponized it yet. So when he comes on screen with a big fucking laser hammer, I was like, oh, that's a little surprising to me. And like, I mean, if you look back at our notes, you can piece it together. But I do think that is a weakness in Arcane, which is that like sometimes because they have fucking 15 different characters, things fall through the cracks.
Yeah. You and I both thought episode 5 was probably the weakest. And it's really genuinely because like you start out just cutting between Vi and Powder and Victor and Jace with like cameos from Vance to like spice it up sometimes. So it's a pretty easy to like back and forth scenario you can switch through. Episode 5, you end up with Victor going solo, Jace and Mel, Powder on her own, and Vi and Caitlyn. So you're keeping up with 4 scenarios, and they do this wild fucking shit where Jace and Mel fuck, all right? They finally get it on, and they're trying to cut Jace and Mel fucking with Victor dying and the hex core absorbing his blood. And like, I get what they were, I think, trying to go for, which was like this montage of like all the like core elements of life, like sex, blood, and magic kind of thing, all like swirling together. It ended up in like a space orgasm. I didn't love it. It felt wild to me. And then when they cut to Vi and Caitlyn, they cut immediately back into my enemy. So it's like the dragons get imagined with Vi and Caitlyn. And then they start the song. And then the song abruptly gets cut out to go to one of the other motherfuckers. And then when you come back to Vi and Caitlyn, you're back to imagining dragons while Jace is going down on Mel's pussy. Like, it was ambitious.
Listeners, which Imagine Dragons song should you go down on your partner to? Write in, let us know.
Enemy.
Yeah,
Unhinged.
but I think that there is a problem, especially in episode 5, of them cutting between too many things at once, and it can become disjointed. But again, they sometimes they drop the balls, but generally I do feel like Arcane does a pretty good job of juggling them. So
yeah, I mean, they've got a lot of they're juggling a lot. Like it's an admirable job. I really think that they did a fantastic job visually, and because the editing's really cool. The writing's incredibly cohesive. Like it's just a genuinely really well written show. And I feel like at this point, a lot of our criticisms are so. I think this is a rare opportunity for us where we're like allowed to be nuanced and like actually kind of dig in, because the things that are off aren't off in an obvious way. It's just constraints. Like literally the only thing we're genuinely criticizing are the constraints they were working under.
Yeah, like I think this is a very, very impressive technical program, and we have to respect that. As far as the writing goes, I think you pointed out something very interesting, which is that at least this first season of Arcane centered a lot around revenge stories, specifically the revenge stories of Silco on Vander and Jinx seeking revenge on Powder, and just like, the top side of Piltover in general. I was just wondering what you thought about like why it worked in Arcane.
Right, I think that a lot of revenge stories kind of gloss over this, but I think that they did a really good job, especially with Silco and Vander, of like, for the injured party trying to get revenge, time stops. For the injurer, their life goes on. So, especially for Silco, like, when he approaches Vander, as all this is going on, you could tell Vander's fully moved past. Like, yeah, he still has the thing on his arm, and he has the scar, and he remembers Silco, and he's like, sad about having to do that to his brother. But he has a different life now. Meanwhile, Silco has been waiting for an opportunity to get back at him. And it's kind of the same thing with Powder. And I just, again, like, really, really good, like, nuanced, a nuanced approach to a revenge story, because, like, even with these characters' motivations and, like, some of them actively trying to hurt each other, Silco still goes to talk to Vander's statue at the end, So a lot of these relationships are, like, lasting, and they're nothing is certain, and nothing is totalitarian, or not totalitarian, nothing is, like, ever fully severed between any of these people. So yeah, I thought it was really well done. It was really refreshing to see, like, genuine complexity in a lot of these characters.
Yeah, definitely. And before we begin to transition to the end of our show, I do want to get your Craft Corner segment. Specifically, you tweeted about this shot of Heimerdinger's face, and like you talked about how like this level of like detail and complexity and composition of this one character had to be a meeting, and I'd really like to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, okay, so my Craft Corner, really briefly, I like to play a game. I used to have film student critic brain, which is like, when you're a film student, you just nitpick everything to hell and you're no longer fun to watch anything with. I'm done with that. I'm no longer film student critic brain. I have meeting brain now. I will look at a minor detail and I will go, that was a meeting. And Heimerdinger's face was a meeting, and I'll tell you why. Because he's not human, and all of the lead characters in this are human. And when you have fur in a stylized show, you need to decide how you're going to approach it. So there was definitely a meeting where several stakeholders sat down with several approaches to this fur, and they had to like figure it out and fight it out with some tech people. I guarantee it. It's the only thing I could think about anytime Heimerdinger moved. I'm like, there was a meeting about how much his fur was supposed to move. For sure. And how it reflected light and how much further was 100,000%. The other part of my Craft Corner is as such. I hate Disney. The corporation, not the artists that work there.
It's just that we're trying to get hired by them. So I mean, we do hate Disney. Like, let's be clear, we do hate Disney, but we will also accept their money.
Yeah, we want control of Kingdom Hearts. I Here, I hate the Disney monopoly, I think is the better way to put that.
Yes.
Because Fortiche is a French studio. I don't know how much anybody knows about the French animation scene, but they have, like, very good, like, beautiful experimental work that they do all the time. There's a lot of wonderful French directors working. There's a wonderful 2D animation school there. Goblins is fantastic. I couldn't help but keep thinking the entire time of, like, there are plenty of American studios that have the creatives and the capability to make something like Arcane, but at this point, so many of them are owned by Disney, who will buy up studios with the intention of making something innovative, and then, sure, the artists that work there and the art-minded people that work under these companies want to push the envelope and they want to do something cool and creative, but then all the people in the C-suites care about is doing the stuff that's already been tested. And it just makes me so mad every time, because Arcane is beautiful and I think we could have so much more work like that, but it is so hard to do when your country lives in a fucking media monopoly. So that's my craft corner for the episode.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it is, it is weird to be taking the side of fucking Riot Games for any reason, but, it is a shame when we get so much of our media flattened by certain, not just IP restrictions, but, like, content restrictions and ideas for where your particular, property, or not property, but like business wants your media to appeal to and apply to. And yeah, I really, really liked how we got like a thing that is ostensibly both for kids and also like pretty out there and experimental and gritty. Like one of my cousins, who is like a pretty normie guy, like tweeted about how he watched it with his 14-year-old son and like had a great time with it. And I'm glad that this has this kind of appeal.
Yeah, exactly. I think it would be great. Would you like to introduce your conceit for our marketing minute here?
Yeah. So, thinking about this, I was just so impressed that they were able to take such like what I assume, I'm not into League again, but like bare bones lore for like a video game that is really not about the lore. And spin it off into this very nuanced and complicated Netflix show. And I was thinking, what property would I like to be spun off into a Netflix show, especially with regards to something that has bare bones lore, such as League. And like, this is a cop-out, because I've just been playing a lot of this game lately, but I would really love just like one season of Inscription, just like digging into the game Funa like developers coding Inscription and dealing with all the weird magic shit that goes on in there. Like, it doesn't have to be long. I really don't care about the Karnoffel code because I read the ARG and where it ends up is very stupid, but I really liked Inscription a lot. But Leyla, what would you turn into a Netflix show?
Give me a Xenosaga show. Give me 3 fucking seasons, Netflix. Do it. Do it, you cowards. Fucking do it. Dune is hot right now. You know what I could do with a Nietzsche-flavored Bible space opera? Are you fucking kidding me? With a bisexual scientist in the lead? Are you fucking joking? With a hot android who can, like, shoot lasers out of her abdomen? Netflix. Netflix, baby. You have more money than you know what to do with. I deserve some of it.
Netflix, call us. We've got ideas. Listen, we just said we hated Disney. We'll take your money too. We ain't picky.
I'll take any corporation's money. It will not make me less resentful of the capitalistic system in which our media environment lives. But, support your local artists, etc. Congratulations to Fortiche. This was a fucking achievement. Good job.
Yes. 100% really, really great show. And listeners, for season 3, we're going to try something special. Leyla has gone through the work of setting up a little Google phone number that you can leave voicemail messages to us for. So if you want to call in and answer the question, what property you would spin off into a Netflix show, especially with regards to having very little lore, you can call our hotline, which is 775-573-8882. Again, that's 775-573-8882. Nope, fuck. 8882. We would love to hear what you have to say. And if you leave us a voice message, we'll give you a shout out or something. But yeah, we're just gonna try some new stuff in season 3. We'll see what fucking happens this year. But yeah, I think this is a banger of a first ep. I was really, really glad we got together and watched Arcane, because it was a great time.
Yeah, we actually know what we're doing next week, which is rare. We actually planned ahead a little bit. We are doing the new Star Wars trilogy next week, so.
Oh, boy.
Yep. So.
Yeah, all that joy and excitedness at something new and interesting, that will not be present in next week's episode, but we will have a talk about it, I'm sure. But Leyla, when we're not raging at the media monopoly, where else can people find us on the internet?
You can find me at LEYLSES on Twitter, Tumblr. I'm just doing stuff, whatever happens. Aaron, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at AaronSXL, where I talk about health policy and tabletop RPGs. You can listen to the other podcasts I do at The Bible Boys. We're going to be doing an episode this week on the conversion camp documentary Pray Away. So if you want something extremely grim, check that out. Our theme song is Obsolete by Keshko from the album Filmmakers Reference Kit Volume 2. You can find more of their music at keshko.bandcamp.com. Leyla, as we send our listeners off into Season 3, what do we always say at the end of every episode?
Try not to lose your nuts.
We'll see you next week.